with whatever you want. Let's go with FSU and ACC initially, because we had like 9 different tweets and discussions and quotes from people who were watching the trial, including Matt Baker. And the next thing you know, at the end of the day, this is from Rohan Law, who was following it. Well, complaint dismissed. The FSU complaint dismissed. Now, that looks like they lost, but Judge Cooper grants the motion to dismiss with leave to amend on the issue of personal jurisdiction, and on and on. What this means is FSU needs to not regroup, but they need to go back to the drawing board, come back with better maybe material and or a focus on exactly what they're after.
Well, yeah, he told the ACC that the ACC is arguing that because the contract was not in Florida, it's like for multiple states, that the grant of rights and all these things don't necessarily apply. And he said, well, you're doing business in Florida, so it does apply. So really when it comes to jurisdiction, they need to refile it under some different parameters. So the lawsuit's not over. The other thing I would say is he said within 90 days, there's going to be discovery in this case. And with 120 days, he'll send them to mediation, because that's what he does for every case other than like severe cases of like real estate fraud. So everything that this judge hears, he sends to mediation, even if it's going to come back to him. So in the next 3 months, we're going to get discovery, which I still don't think we'll ever see. And then in the next 6 months, we will get, or 5 months, 6 months, we'll get, mediation, but we'll see about that.
Could be 3 or 4 months down the road before this thing, as he said, maybe break bread. Craig?
Yeah, this didn't seem like it was that big of a deal in the big picture. Like, this wasn't earth-shaking movement one way or the other. I don't think you say, like, this side won today. It's basically, I guess, based on the Florida State folks I read, I guess you give them a slight, a
split decision.
But nothing that's like, go home and celebrate and act like it's all over. We're nowhere close to that. FSU's attorney did say that they still feel like they can come to a settlement agreement on that overall figure of $140 million, which everybody is expected could get done. It's just a matter of, do you want to get in the room, and at what point do you want to go and knock that out, and everybody can go their separate ways. But for the time being, at least, they are trying to, as much as possible, get determined whether or not they can truly enforce the grant of rights on the ACC side. FSU is attacking those grant of rights and wants to see how ironclad that they are. And obviously, if they can get out of those, and that changes the whole trajectory of this bad boy, because then you're talking about a major difference in the money potentially owed and so on. So, yeah, they're attacking those grant of rights. Didn't get any clarity there. And so this just moves on to another phase. I know that I saw where they could have a hearing on the personal jurisdiction, but that's not necessarily. So it's just, it's one of those that I don't think today was like a big moment occurred per se. It was more just the jockeying. It's more of the jockeying and just the legal minutia and the ongoing case, if you will. But I still feel like there's a strong chance that they do eventually, before all is said and done, come to an agreement of some sort, rather than taking this all the way through. I know, Paul, you felt like that's going to be the case the entire time, that they're never going to get to the discovery stage and then full-on battle in the courtroom, and nobody really wants that. But, yeah, Florida State and Clemson, for the time being, they're going to try and attack that grant of rights as much as they possibly can, and then if they get an answer one day of like, yeah, you know what, it's not totally enforceable, then voila, and magic, and it can go from there.
You got to pay money. It just may not be $400, $800, $800, $900, or $1 billion, but you're going to have to pay some money. That might be the key.
Early on, Florida State's argument today, they said, look, the biggest thing that we're kind of looking for here is the grant of rights can be negotiated, in our opinion, but the penalty is arbitrary and unlawful. Like, it's too punitive, the penalty. So they're trying to get the
same one that Texas and Oklahoma had to abide by, even though even then they ended up paying a little bit less than what people thought.
Yeah, they're saying the penalty is more too punitive for them to be able to conduct reasonable business on this. But the winner in any kind of discovery is the one who cares less about what you find out. Yeah. So if FSU and Clemson don't really want it out there, but they still care less about, I don't care really what you find out about us. We're maybe even by filing this lawsuit and saying we're unhappy, we're admitting that this stupid decision was made by us to sign this deal. So that'll be all out. Everybody kind of knows that. We want to see your dirty laundry here. And that's where the ACC and ESPN will be like, well, we don't really want people to see that.
All right. The spring game, we'll start with Arch Manning. Had a hell of a day. I looked at the highlight tapes I watched a bunch of different reels of highlights of teams that had their spring games, etc., over the weekend. 19 of 25 passing, 355, 3 touchdowns. Jelani McDonald picked him off at the end, but the former Connolly star here in Waco had touchdowns to more blue. The one to blue was impressive, kind of a slant. Obviously, Isaiah Bond, the transfer from Alabama. So everybody is frothing at the mouth. It was very impressive. Ewers is still QB1. Texas fans can debate that if they want. If they want, some will, some won't.
Yeah, I mean, it's Quinn Ewers' team. I mean, that's still the case, but it's cool to see Arch Manning out there. You know, I am not one of those that kind of fanboys for him. I think if I was younger, maybe I would, because I did that for Adrian Peterson back in the day when we were kind of close in age, and I was like, wow, this dude's a stud. So, you know, he's got a big audience already, and people are clamoring to see more of Arch Manning, and so they got that opportunity on Saturday, and it was everything you wanted it to be, right? I mean, if you're a person that's rooting for him and you're a Texas fan, I mean, you got your fill on Saturday, and it's exciting to see what that could eventually turn into. But there is one caveat. He's still got Quinn Ewers in front of him, but you also take into account Trey Owens and what he did.
Yep. You go ahead and say that, Craig, as you put up the next tweet, Garrett.
Their other young quarterback, Trey Owens, Texas fans, a ton of confidence. Yeah, with the depth chart, Trey Owens had a big day as well, connected with their big 5-star new wide receiver in Ryan Wingo on a touchdown that, I mean, if you're checking the boxes of what you'd like to see as a Texas fan, there were a bunch of them that got checked. Your quarterback room in particular provided a lot of those checks. And so, yeah, it's very exciting, whereas there are a lot of programs that are having a hard time managing, even having like a 2-man depth chart because of competition and opportunities elsewhere in the transfer portal. Sarkisian, with his reputation as a quarterback whisperer, and then Texas having the foundation that they do to be able to take care of their athletes on a level that not a lot of people can, they do have the luxury of that combination providing them with probably the best quarterback room top to bottom, arguably in college football right now. You can have the argument, I guess, other places, but it's right there in the talk. And so a lot to be excited about when it comes to the future, and still with Quinn Ewers, he's got a lot that's, potentially there that we haven't seen from him just yet.
Well, think about their room, and they lost, obviously, Malik Murphy.
Yeah.
And he moved on, who's going to start this next year. One of the things that scrimmage or that game was also set up, and I think I saw this from somebody, I don't know if it was UT or Paxton, it was kind of an offense that was against a defense that wasn't going to show too much. They did have some pressure, but it was almost set up to have an explosive type game.
Yeah, I mean, as most spring games are, right?
Crowd, yeah.
And so, you got Owens throwing a bunch of touchdowns, Manning's throwing a bunch of touchdowns. I mean, lots of scoring, lots of fun. So, yeah, I think you got your time's worth, time well spent on Saturday if you're a Texas fan or just a fan of some of the guys that were involved there. But, yeah, the quarterbacks definitely were headliners. Again, Wingo, when you think about who they're replacing with A.D. Mitchell and obviously Xavier Worthy, like how quickly can that young 5-star roll in and make an impact?
Wingo, Bond.
Yeah, Isaiah Bond, and so on and so forth. I mean, they're going to be loaded on offense so long as Sark's the head coach, but it's really, you could see signs of just how healthy they are on Saturday. So, a lot to get excited about. Also, not too excited because it is a spring game after all, but they clearly are on a nice little run right now. There's no doubt about it, especially at quarterback.
All right, speaking of a shootout game, Mississippi State, Jeff Lebby, first year there. Blake Shapen, former Baylor quarterback, 18 of 22, 312 yards, 3 touchdowns, long passes, 60 yards. A lot of them were fades, which is what you run in the Lebby offense. Plus, you try to hope you pound the midsection like that offense has done for so many years. But apparently, Blake Shapen at least had the Mississippi State fan base excited. A different offense than what he's been a part of when he was at Baylor. And good for him. If he has a good year, good luck. Blake Shapen with a pretty nice spring game, too.
Yeah, it's good to see that for them, for Mississippi State. Hopefully he's adjusting well and, if he adjusts well to that offense, it kind of makes Baylor seem a little silly to have kept with the wide zone and not adjusted. But you never know these things. It worked for a little while, so why not change it? But Yeah, I don't know. Like, people get excited about quarterback play in the spring game. It's like, well,
I know
they're not allowed to actually be tackled.
Right, yeah.
Like, it's one thing for the other coach and referees to be mad at you for hitting a quarterback late. It's another thing for your coaches to be like, what are you doing? So,
Jason Shear, by the way, is good for 4:30, so we're good.
Yeah.
So with Blake Shapen, that's great that he had a big day. We'll see if it translates to the field of the regular season. But, yeah, that was a really nice showing and certainly seemed like a lot of people were pumped up for that. You know how fickle people can be, though, so he's got to go do it in real time, real action. But for a guy who definitely took a lot of lumps and a lot of criticism, and I think some of it was definitely unfairly, that – you know, he's got this new opportunity is great, and one of the benefits of the transfer portal, because I cannot imagine how toxic it would have been if he had returned to Baylor for another year. I just think the fan base would have revolted and just lost their minds if that would have been the case, because you got your fill. It was time for him to go and do something different. It was time for them to pivot and do something different. Both sides can win here. I think they're excited about the offense they have now and the quarterbacks that they have now. And obviously Mississippi State, Jeff Lebby, there's some excitement there with the new system, new coach, new style, and new quarterback. So, I need to see him do it all year long. But that's a nice start for Blake Shapen, and certainly he deserves a little bit of positivity.
It seems like the Baylor football program has that with Charlie Brewer and then Blake Shapen. It was not quite as toxic.
Well, they're
at the
both
end,
similar,
but
too.
Very similar.
They look alike to some extent. Size-wise,
Yep.
style-wise, all that. So, yeah, I mean, Blake can throw it around, man. I mean, he was running the wide zone the last couple of years, and they didn't have a great running game either time. So, he was not always put in the best situations. There was health at times as well, but the dude's got skills. Let's see how he can do over the course of an entire season in the SEC. But what a great litmus test that's going to be for him. So he's going to get challenged more than ever before, and if he passes those challenges, then I think there'll be plenty of people that are rooting for him to do well.